What's good? It's Woog. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. Jermell Charlo and Brian Castano fought to become undisputed champ at 154. All 4 belts were on the line. 3 coming from Jermell Charlo, 1 coming from Brian Castano. And this was certainly an action-packed fight that unfortunately resulted in a draw. So it was not the ideal result, but the fight itself, nobody could really be mad at. It was a pretty electrifying fight, and there were a lot of ebbs and flows. You know, I had the fight pretty much scored 7 rounds to 5 for Castano. I could see 8 to 4 Castano. I could see 6 to 6 an actual draw. I could not see 7 to 5 Jermell Charlo. And I certainly couldn't see what was one of the scorecards, 117, 111, Jermell Charlo. That one needs to really be under review. That was crazy. So, you know, it was an unfortunate result in the sense that the battle for undisputed essentially went unresolved. But I can't say that the wrong call was made, that the wrong result transpired. I don't have a problem with the draw. I feel like it was either a draw or a decision win for Brian Castano. Now, the most significant things taking place in this fight were, 1, Jermell Charlo's jab. I think that kind of kept him in the fight. Yes, he did blast Castano and hurt him in like the 2nd round and then hurt him again in the 10th round. But it was really Jermell Charlo's jab that might have scored a couple rounds in his favor. The jab, sometimes in some of the slower rounds where there wasn't anybody, you know, getting devastatingly hurt, you know, the slower pace rounds, some of those were more or less not controlled, but perhaps won through the Jermell Charlo jab. So very, very important fight. He, you know, didn't always keep it pumping as often as he probably should have. And he got caught with his back against the ropes way too much. But it was an active jab, and it was an accurate jab. And Jermell Charlo is known to have a strong jab. I mean, the jab is what ended the fight against Jason Rosario. Now, another super significant punch of that fight was the Brian Castano overhand right hand, which he continued to catch Jermell Charlo with. He would sometimes, you know, jab to the body, then come over the top with an accurate right hand. Sometimes he would just come behind a jab and throw the right hand at range, not even doing the looping, put your head down overhand right hand. So he was hitting Jermell Charlo with a multitude of right hand styles. And sometimes he would follow the connected right hand up with a left hook. So his combination punching, which we knew was going to be a significant issue for Jermell Charlo, you know, should have probably won Brian Castano the fight. I think that Castano was finding so many moments to, you know, essentially trap Jermell Charlo against the rope and then to throw 3 to 5 punches. And those combinations were really crispy. They were landing with a lot of thuds. Some of those punches were to the body. And, you know, we even saw Jermell Charlo backed up a few times with connections up top that kind of either seemingly wobbled Jermell Charlo or at least got him to kind of capitulate and to kind of roll into the ropes. And it wasn't like he was rolling with the punches that I'm talking about. Some of them he was caught pretty flush with. Now, most of the punches that were landing up top, he was, you know, skillfully rolling with, but a lot of them he wasn't, including a lot of Brian Castano jabs. Now, Castano wasn't nearly as effective with the jab as Jermell Charlo was, but he made up for that with that combination punching. That, again, so many spots in the different rounds seemed to take on that tone where you couldn't help but come away from the round saying, I gotta give that one to Brian Castano. Like, after 8 rounds, I had it either 5 rounds to 3 Brian Castano or even 6 rounds to 2 Brian Castano. It depends on what you want to do with that first round. Probably the most inactive round of the fight. So this wasn't the easiest fight to score, but it wasn't the most difficult in the sense that you got an idea of what the acceptable ranges, scorecards wise, could be. you know that 117-111 was absolutely bogus. Like, even if you wanted to give it a 115-113 in favor of Jermell Charlo, you would still catch a mad side eye from me. I would be thinking, what the hell did you see? To have Jermell Charlo win that fight by a round, I didn't see it, but it was still somewhat within the realm of loose possibility. I didn't score it that way. Again, I saw it anywhere between 6 rounds to 6 to 8 rounds to 4 in favor of Brian Castano. But yeah, 117-111 was ridiculous, but I felt like we at least got a range, and we could agree on what the range of possibilities should be for this Charlo versus Castano fight. It was very competitive, and even the rounds that I would bank for Castano, there were some things that Jermell Charlo did well. I just didn't think that there were enough things that he did well in those rounds to offset or to outweigh the different things that Castano was effective at in those rounds. But this was a really good fight. This delivered big time because it did play out style-wise the way that a lot of us kind of saw this materializing. It was just a question of whether Jermell Charlo, given those challenges because of Castano's style, whether his punching power would rule the day, or if he would be able to dig deep, perhaps score a knockdown or multiple knockdowns, or just really badly hurt Castano to where you could actually give Jermell Charlo a 10-8 round. He would need something like that, I thought, to win a decision here. And I did have him in my prediction video winning by super razor close decision. But that was assuming that he was going to either land a knockdown or badly hurt Castano to the point where you could give a 10-8 round to Jermell Charlo. That didn't end up being the case. I didn't even think that in that second round and in the 10th round, the 2 rounds where Jermell Charlo most visibly hurt Brian Castano, I didn't see either of those as being 10-8 rounds. I didn't think that they were that dominant, or that Brian Castano was really on the verge of like just getting stopped, you know? But this was a very good fight. But again, decision-wise, with the draw, nobody's really satisfied with draws because of the lack of resolution. And, you know, in the corner when Derrick James was basically telling Jermell Charlo, you're going to have to score a knockout, get him out of there in order to win the fight. Yeah, I agree that that could have been some gamesmanship. Like, Derrick James might not have truly believed that Charlo was losing. Maybe he thought that there was a possibility of him being down on the cards, but this was a very tough fight in the sense that, you know, going into the 12th round, you really didn't know how this would be scored. But I did get the feeling that this was going to be a super critical round. The 12th round was going to be critical for Jermell Charlo to win that in order to even have a chance at a draw or a decision win. But they scored it a draw overall. Again, one of those scorecards, the one that went to Jermell Charlo, 117-111, totally bogus. So where do we go from here? Well, the easiest answer, and an answer that I'm down with, is that they run it back. If they both still want that claim for undisputed and it matters that much to both fighters right now, just go ahead and make the fight happen. Obviously, I would give it some significant time because this was essentially a war. It wasn't necessarily, you know, the most devastating of wars, but this was a very high action-packed fight. Both guys were pretty exhausted by the end of it. Both of them had their bell rung a couple of times each throughout this contest. So I would want to give it, you know, 6 months to 9 months, you know, before the next fight between the two should take place. But I do think that it's the right call if we are really trying to get resolution here in the 154-pound division. I have seen other fighters like Tim Tszyu, you know, Costa Tszyu's son, who's been surging at 154. I've seen him recently calling out, you know, Castano, saying, let's make this happen. But I do think that there's unfinished business here between Jermell and Brian Castano. And I don't know who I would favor in the rematch. You know, Jermell Charlo did avenge his only loss to Tony Harrison by stopping Harrison, but it's not because he made the adjustments after the first fight and looked a lot better in the second fight, made all the corrections, and basically learned from his mistakes of the first fight. If anything, I thought that Tony Harrison, round over round, was having more success against Jermell Charlo in the rematch than in the first fight. It's just that Jermell Charlo ended up scoring the stoppage in the later rounds. That kind of saved the day. We've seen that a couple times now from Jermell Charlo, and I think a lot of people thought that his power was going to get him out of the difficulties that he'd be having with Brian Castano here. But I do think that a rematch is the fight to make. Jermell said that he doesn't want to go to 160 now because, you know, he would be essentially undercutting his brother, his twin brother, Jermell Charlo, who's been campaigning at 160 middleweight for the past 6 fights. Although we still want to see Jermell, the bigger brother, test himself with more quality opponents at 160. Granted, he did beat Derevianchenko 2 fights ago, but he isn't fighting, you know, most of the elite guys we want to see him in there with to really see where he is among the middleweight elite. Unlike Jermell is finding out where he stands. And right now, it looks like him and Castano stand just about neck and neck. Again, I would have given Castano a slight edge on the scorecards, but again, because of the result, I feel like the rematch is the fight to make. So if not that fight, let me know what you think that they should do going forward for their next fight, if not the Charlo versus Castano rematch. But yeah, let me know what you thought about the fight. Again, disappointing decision because it's a draw, inconclusive in a way, but the fight itself, yeah, that was pretty damn good. I think we got the best out of both guys. It's just a clash of styles, and I don't think that it played into Jermell Charlo's favor because of his, you know, willingness to sometimes let the opponent set the pace and the tempo, and then just trying to be sometimes too patient in countering off that. Although, again, I feel like Jermell Charlo's use of the jab is what made this fight competitive on the scorecards. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.